Now, preview time. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas! 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 Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and we're almost halfway through our week-long Salute to Scrooge. Today we're going to be taking a look at Alastair Sim as the title character of Ebenezer Scrooge in 1951's Scrooge, alongside Mervyn Johns, Michael Hordern, Glenn Dearman, Michael J. Dolan, Francis DeWolf, Carol Marsh, and Jack Warner. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. And as I said in the introduction, we're almost at the halfway point here of discussing our Salute to Scrooge this week. We're going to take a look at the 1951 film simply titled Scrooge, with Alastair Sim as Ebenezer himself. And our movie opens on Christmas Eve of 1843, as Ebenezer Scrooge tells two businessmen that he has no intention of celebrating Christmas, while at his workplace he refuses to donate to two men collecting for the poor. His nephew Fred then arrives and invites him to dinner the next day, but Scrooge refuses, going as far as to disparage Fred for having gotten married against his will. However, Scrooge reluctantly gives his poor clerk, Bob Cratchit, the following day off as a paid holiday, but he expects him to be back to work all the earlier the following day. Scrooge then returns home and sees his door knocker transform into the face of his long-dead partner, Jacob Marley. Inside of the house, Jacob Marley appears as a ghost before Scrooge, warning that he must either repent or suffer being forever bound in chains after his death. Marley further warns Scrooge that he will be visited by three spirits, with the first arriving at 1 o'clock. Frightened by Marley's visit, Scrooge takes refuge in his bed. At 1 o'clock, the ghost of Christmas past arrives. Scrooge has shown himself alone at school, unwanted by his father ever since his mother died in childbirth. His beloved sister Fan then arrives in order to take him home, telling her brother that their father has recently had a change of heart towards Ebenezer. Next, the spirit shows Scrooge the annual Christmas party being thrown by his benevolent employer, Fezziwig. He witnesses his proposal to his sweetheart, Alice, who accepts his ring. He is then shown how he is tempted to leave Fezziwig's to join a business ran by Mr. Jarkin, where he meets Jacob Marley. After Jarkin's firm buys up Fezziwig's failed business, Alice breaks her engagement to Scrooge because of his dedication to a golden idol. Scrooge then witnesses the death of Fan, who had just given birth to his nephew Fred, and discovers that he missed her last words, asking him to look after her son. Years later, when Jarkin is found to have embezzled funds from his now bankrupt company, Scrooge and Marley make good on the missing funds, essentially taking over the company. On Christmas Eve, 1836, Scrooge refuses to leave work early in order to visit Marley, who is on his deathbed. When Scrooge finally arrives, Marley, realizing he will be punished for his misdeeds, tries to warn Scrooge before he dies. The spirit then reproaches Scrooge for taking Marley's money and house, as an ashamed Scrooge finds himself back in bed. Scrooge is then visited by the ghost of Christmas Present, who takes him to see how men of goodwill celebrate Christmas. He shows him poor miners joyfully singing Christmas carols as well as the Cratchits' warm Christmas celebration. Scrooge inquires whether the disabled child, Tiny Tim, will survive his physical condition, but the spirit hints that he may not. They next visit Fred's Christmas party, where Fred proceeds to defend his uncle from his guests' snide remarks. Alice is now working in a poorhouse where she lovingly ministers to the sick and homeless on Christmas Eve. When Scrooge is unable to tell the spirit that he may profit from what he has seen, the spirit shows him two children that personify want and ignorance, and pointedly mocks Scrooge with the miser's very own words. When Scrooge shows concern for their welfare, are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Finally, Scrooge encounters the ghost of Christmas yet to come, who proceeds to show him the Cratchits mourning the death of Tiny Tim. He then watches as three people, including his charwoman, Miss Dilber, sell off the possessions of a dead man, and two businessmen discussing the man's funeral proposals. When shown that the man's grave bears his own name, Scrooge begs the spirit for a second chance, pleading that he is not the man that he once was. Scrooge then awakens in his own bed to discover from Mrs. Dilber that it's Christmas Day, and he realizes he still has an opportunity to make amends. Although Mrs. Dilber is initially frightened by his transformation, Scrooge reassures her and promises to raise her salary. He then anonymously purchases a turkey dinner for the Cratchits and delights Fred by attending his dinner party and dancing with the other guests. The next day, Scrooge plays a practical joke on Bob Cratchit, pretending to dismiss him for being late, but instead gives him a raise. Scrooge then becomes as good of a man as the old city ever knew, as well as a second father to Tiny Tim, who does not die and gets well again as our movie comes to its end. To a lot of people, and by a lot of people's standards, Alastair Sim's version of Scrooge is the definitive version. And in a lot of ways, it's hard to argue it because I feel like you get a lot more of the story of Scrooge and A Christmas Carol that's left out of other interpretations. For example, you discover why his dad resents him as much as he does, in the fact that Scrooge's mom died in childbirth while giving birth to Scrooge. So now you understand a little bit why his dad resents him. Then that comes back into play as Fred, his nephew, his mom, Fan, Scrooge's older sister, dies in childbirth while giving birth to Fred. And to a certain extent, we know kind of why Scrooge and Fred now have this tumultuous relationship, where instead of taking care of his sister's son like he was asked to, like he was supposed to, he kind of resents Fred. You get the whole thing with want and ignorance, which, while it does appear in other tellings of the story, is really prevalent here, especially the way that the ghost of Christmas present throws Scrooge's words back at him with the, are there no workhouses, no prisons for these poor beings to go to be serviced? I do enjoy the way that it's kind of thrown back into his face when he sees these two kids, the personifications of want and ignorance. I like how we get more of the backstory here with Scrooge and Marley and how they become friends and partners, buying out the company, and how we see how Scrooge has become so engulfed in his business that he's unwilling to close to be by his partner's side as he's on his deathbed. It kind of it strengthens that bond between Scrooge and Marley in the storytelling aspect, and it also shows a little bit more of how these chains were forged in life. I would say that out of all of the live action roles for Scrooge that I've seen, this is probably either my second or third favorite telling of the story. It's good. It's still not personal favorite. It's still not family favorite, but I can really understand why a lot of people consider this to be the definitive Christmas Carol telling. When it comes to my rating of 1951 Scrooge, I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's definitely up there, and I highly recommend that you guys track it down on DVD, Blu ray, streaming, whatever. Give it a watch this holiday season if you've never seen it before. Those of you that have seen it, what are your thoughts on Alastair Sim as Scrooge? Let me know if you're watching the premiere. Leave your thoughts and comments over here. If you're watching on demand later in the day, leave your thoughts and comments down here. Let's have that conversation, that discussion, that debate, that interaction that I'm always asking you guys for in the comments below. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. And we're going to take a look at the made-for-TV telling of A Christmas Carol from 1984, starring George C. Scott, Frank Finley, David Warner, Angela Pleasance, Edward Woodward, Michael Carter, Roger Rees, Joanne Whalley, and Michael Gow. And then at the top of the half hour, immediately following that, it'll be back to the Disney Plus original series, The Santa Clauses, as we take a look at Chapter 4, The Shoes Off the Bed Clause, starring Tim Allen, Elizabeth Mitchell, Austin Kane, Cal Penn, Elizabeth Allen Dick, Matilda Lawler, Devin Bright, Rupali Red, Isabella Bennett, and Laura San Giacomo. You don't want to miss out on any of that content right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel on all new episodes of Renegades Reviews. Got so much more in store as we continue our salute to Scrooge this week. We've got some Christmas chestnuts coming up next week. You don't want to miss out on anything. So make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure that notification bell is turned on so you don't miss out anytime a video drops right here on the Casa D18 Studios channel or anytime we go live, as is the case with Statboy Sports Bar, Open Mic Night, pay-per-view PLE coverage, etc. Share these videos with your family, friends, loved ones, coworkers, movie fanatics, cinephiles in your life, fans of Charles Dickens, fans of the A Christmas Carol story, fans of the character of Ebenezer Scrooge, fans of Alastair Sim, anybody you can think of that would enjoy my content, my videos. Share this with them. It's the only way we're going to boost visibility up in YouTube's algorithms so I can eventually get monetized, make some money at this. Thank you once again to everyone who joined in and tuned in today. It means more to me than you'll ever know. And I will see you guys next time.